regular followers of my stuff might be forgiven for thinking that I'm opposed to psychiatry and the biological model. After all, I regularly complain about the standard medical approach with its reliance upon medication to treat mental disorder, especially related to antipsychotics for people diagnosed with disorders like schizophrenia. But that doesn't mean I'm anti-psychiatry, just that I'm cautious. This is especially true where medications are concerned. The list of side effects, otherwise known as undesirable consequences, that accompany psychotropic drugs can be a major problem, but the same is and has always been true of all medications, from AZT to aspirin. If a particular person suffers side effects from a particular drug, then there's a case for trying a different drug or even a different dose, but that in itself isn't really a case for scrapping all psychiatric medication. All we can really say is that we need to be cautious about medication and avoid the hammer to crack a nut approaches of the past. Medications are biological tools. They're chemical preparations designed to make chemical changes in the physical body. This is because of an assumption that mental disorders are caused by physical and specifically chemical problems. But is this always true? Combat veterans are known to develop psychiatric disorders as a result of their experiences on active service. It seems ridiculous to assume that all these men and women who've passed psychological evaluations before entering the battlefield suffer from organic brain disorders. Yet the symptoms are similar, if not identical, to those experienced by many of their civilian counterparts who are diagnosed with major psychotic disorders and treated with chemicals. Combat veterans suffer a form of psychosis that's not caused by biology so much as by stress. Might we not say the same about the overworked teacher or even the nurse? For these people, I think there's an excellent case for using medication to treat symptoms and distress and to provide a degree of respite, but that's not the same as cure. That's one thing I do disagree with traditional psychiatry about. I believe that recovery is attainable for many more people than the drug companies would have you believe. Happily, so do many modern psychiatrists. People like me who advocate recovery aren't so much joining the mainstream as the mainstream is catching up. That's a nice feeling. There are, of course, many who argue vehemently that psychiatry is flawed and medication should never be used on people who hear voices, etc. But just as not all disorders are necessarily chemical, so not all disorders need to be stress-related. Whether you're in favour of medication or not, there is a real problem of polarisation and over-generalisation in mental health care. The disadvantage of these black and white arguments is that they assume that everyone's the same and everyone needs the same sort of intervention. This kind of one-sidedness can feel easy and comfortable for those making the argument, but there's a price to be paid for that sort of superficial reasoning. The price is poor treatment, and that price isn't generally paid by the individuals doing the argument. It's paid by the mental health service users whose options for recovery are limited not by lack of knowledge, but by a stubborn refusal on both sides of the argument to look beyond their own pet theories. If I seem a little hard-nosed about this, it's for good reason. I was trained in the traditional way where medication and unquestioning acceptance of the biological model were everything. I was at the extreme medical end of the continuum. Then I was lucky enough to be selected by the NHS for training at the post-grad level, and I spent 2 years being exposed to the other side of the coin. And like many of my peers, I became just as rabid in my defence of social and psychological perspectives instead. I was for a while the typical anti-psychiatrist, or more accurately anti-psychiatric nurse. And that felt good. Today, I've moved on a little from either of those two positions. Now I'm able to see past the partisan posturing of either side, and I try to walk the middle line. It seems to me that balance is everything. Isn't that usually the case? I no longer see much of a place for extremism in mental health care, especially when those who pay the price are not the ones making the arguments. Please don't misunderstand me though, I'm far from an apologist from the biomedical status quo. I believe that medication may well have something very positive to offer in relation to symptom management, but in most cases that's about all. I think the true recovery is generally achievable in other ways, but that's for a later video. I'm Stuart Sorensen. You can find me at www.mindthecaretraining.com. And if you found this video useful or informative, please feel free to subscribe to the channel by clicking the little character icon that's in the middle of your screen right now. Thank you very much. I'm Stuart Sorensen. You can find me at www.mindthecaretraining.com. I hope you found this video useful or helpful in some way. If you did, please consider sharing it around your own social network. And if you could subscribe to my video channel too, that would really help me out. Thank you very much indeed.